Hello, and welcome to the Equality Edit. My name's Essie Hardy. The Equality Edit is a podcast where we unpack equality one story at a time. I'm going to introduce you to my guest Joe in a minute, but Joe and I first connected earlier this year when he's built me a brilliant website for celebrating disability. But what we really connected over was Brian Butterfield and his brilliant tales of how to be a really good business leader. So let's hope Joe can match Brian Butterfield today. Do you think you can, Joe?
I'll give it my best shot. I'll try
Excellent.
it.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. There'll be a judgment at the end. So, can I hand over to you, Joe, to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name's Joe. By trade, I am a web designer and web developer. I've been in the industry for over a decade now. So, God, I'm getting old. But I kind of started my career going through like the traditional route, I'd say. Starting at larger companies, starting from junior web designer up to UI team lead to development manager, and kind of worked at that traditional career ladder. But I'd say a couple of years ago, which I'm sure we'll touch on shortly, my life changed in a really positive way, and led me to the creation of a company called Squee. And the premise around Squee is all about website accessibility and inclusive design principles. And I think that's really how I guess me and you connected as well. I see over the love of kind of inclusivity.
Yeah, excellent, brilliant. So it wasn't just Brian Butterfield. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about kind of that great change that happened in your life a while ago. Um, so so talk a little bit about accessibility. I mean, what is the deal? Why does it really matter?
Yeah, so what is website accessibility? Is I guess people have different definitions, but for me, I see it as designing and building websites that can be used by as many people as possible, including those who have disabilities too. And why does it matter? Because in the UK, I'll go through my stats, which I very much love to do. In the UK, 1 in 4 people have a disability,
Wow.
1.3 billion globally. And I think what that highlights is that we're all unique, we all have different access needs, and it should really be reflected online. So with that huge group of people, you'd really expect that businesses and websites are thinking, wow, we need to be prioritizing accessibility. This is really important. Unfortunately, that is very much not the case.
Mm.
There's this brilliant report by WebAIM, Web Accessibility in Mind, who go through and analyze the top 1 million websites every single year. And they put a report together this year, and it showed out of that top 1 million websites, 96% of them were not accessible.
Oh my
So
God.
there's a huge number of websites that have so many issues that are blocking users from using it effectively. And um, I'm sure you're aware, Essie, of the purple pound, but that shows that inaccessible websites cost UK businesses nearly £20 billion every year. So, yeah, accessibility isn't just a social issue. It's not something that you can just palm off. There's a huge business case to it, and I generally think it's such an important topic that's so often overlooked, and I just think it's crucial for organisations today.
That is so true. I mean, that figure is astronomical. It's
It's crazy.
astounding. It was more than I thought actually. That is, it's just, it's hard to wrap your head around, isn't it?
It's,
I've heard so many times. I mean, because obviously you're working with me. You're my web developer now, and you've developed me, as I said, an awesome website. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. It really does look fantastic. Before I worked with you, I've been working with a few other web developers, and I am not a web developer myself. So I work in the disability inclusion space, but I'm not a web developer. So when I said to my web developer, it's really important that my website is inclusive and accessible for everyone. They said, oh, yes, absolutely, definitely. And I found out really quickly that, what they were telling me that they were doing or how they were telling me they were doing it, they really weren't doing it. So I think it kind of really highlights the point that, although we are kind of the users of the website and we're not the experts, that we need to know a little bit about what we're doing. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think it's so pivotal. Because going back to developers, I think even when I went through university and I think learning kind of the initial starting points of web development and web design, it's accessibility is kind of a topic that loosely spoken about, but you don't go into the real specifics. You don't understand why certain elements are so important, like correct semantic HTML. I'm not going to bore everyone with technical terms, don't worry. But
Good, you can
there's
stay
key
away,
elements.
audience. It's all right.
Yeah, there's key elements to web design that is so vital. So that's why it does fall on the individual a little bit to do a few checks, and there's certain things that I think are really important that you can do. For example, I like to something that I really like to do called the tab test. I don't know if any of you have ever done it before, I see, but
I have, but can you just? I'd love to tell my own little story of the tab test, but I'd love for you to just explain what it is first.
yes. So for people that don't know, using a website, most people just navigate with a mouse and everything seems rosy and dandy. But incredibly, you might not know this, there are other ways of using web pages too, and one of them is through keyboard navigation. So everything that you should be able to read, click, and interact with, you should also be able to do that with your keyboard too. So a really good way to test like a developer's if a developer's thought about this or if a theme you're going to purchase is has thought about this, is just go onto the site itself, press the tab button to start with, and you might actually the first thing you see is a button kind of appear out of nowhere saying skip to main content.
Mm.
And this is a really useful feature. It'll allow screenboard users to skip all the navigation. So if they're on a web page for 5 minutes, multiple pages, and they don't want to go through the navigation each time. They just want to get to the content. They can skip it. But then keep pressing tab. Does it highlight buttons? Can you see clearly where you are? When you get to your menu, can you press the space bar or enter to open the menu itself? Can you move across? These are really important things. And if your website is navigatable with a keyboard, it's going to work for a lot of other things like screen readers and braille input, for example. So there's so many benefits, but it's a really important test to do.
It's really interesting. So I tried a screen reader for the first time the other day, and I'm a Mac user, so this can be like a little endorsement for Apple as well. I'm a Mac
Me
user,
too.
so I did. So there's inbuilt screen readers on Apple Mac, and it teaches you how to do it. So I did a little lesson. And then I had to go, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so hard! It
Hmm.
was so hard." And and for somebody who has to do that without actually being able to see on the screen, visualize what's going on as well, it really, I mean, I know from an intellectual point of view, but it really helped me understand from an emotional point of view how imperative it is to get all of these things right. Even if one thing is out, it's so frustrating and it stops somebody from interacting with the website. One of the things that a web developer told me kind of before I joined you, so somebody had complained about the Celebrating Disability website, and actually, it was quite a scathing complaint. Luckily, it was just to me. I don't mind sharing it because it really highlighted for me what I needed to do. Um, they said, you should be ashamed of yourself. Essentially, you're a disability inclusion business, but you're not promoting it through your website. And so I immediately responded and I set up a conversation with him to talk about what he's found and therefore what I would be planning to do as a result of what he's told me. And before that conversation, I went to the web developer and I said, "Look, this is the email he sent me. Can you help me kind of prepare for the meeting? What's happened and what we're going to do about it?" And they responded. The web developer responded by saying, "Well, nobody else has complained, so it's obviously not that bad." And I mean,
Uh,
just for our audience, I will point out kind of the irony in that nobody's complained because they can't because the website's inaccessible.
it's awful, isn't it? I
Mm.
just think that's such a rubbish approach to it because not everyone's going to come up and communicate their issues they have on a website. They're just going to leave. So if you're getting this information, it's really difficult to actually track how many people use screen readers and tab navigation. There's no way of kind of recording that through analytics, but there's going to be a significant amount of people on the site doing it. So You are absolutely right about screen readers too, that they are so pivotal. And I think when I was talking before about how creating a website properly with the correct code, this is where you can really see it because you can open up. I'm also a Mac user, so I'm going to endorse VoiceOver because I mean that's what we both use. But you can kind of open up the menu and you can click through and you can see how the headings are properly linked to each other. You can see how having the correct landmarks and the page so you can quickly navigate to them. If you haven't coded these correctly for someone using a screen reader, it's so difficult to use the website, so difficult. So for developers, it's a really actually good way. I'm sure not too many developers listen, but if you are listening, it's a really good way to understand why building a website properly is so important. Because if you go through onto your screen reader, have a little look at the different menus there, like links, headings, landmarks, you can really start to understand why building it properly is so important. So yeah,
Mm.
I just want to say, Essie, also like I think it's really refreshing that you're able to say like you're a disability inclusion business and you had these accessibility issues, you didn't know about them. Because if you don't know about them and this is your area of expertise, then how are so many other people going to know about it? And this is one of the issues in itself. So many people don't know these key issues.
Yeah.
Developers don't know about it. Businesses don't know about it. EDI professionals don't know about it. So I think the more we can kind of talk about it, spread that information, the more important and more awareness is going to be of it.
Absolutely, Joe. And somebody told me last year, it was actually a business coach when I was talking to them about my business. They said to me, these things that you didn't know before, they're not your fault, but they are your responsibility. And I think that that is a really important and key message. It's not your fault that you don't know the answer, but it is your responsibility to find out, to do something about it, to either make sure your web developer is doing the right thing, probably because not everybody's a web accessibility expert and we don't need to be, but we need to make sure that we get on board with people that are doing the right thing. So, on that note, Joe, what can people do when they're not web developers to kind of get with the program and kind of understand what to do or what to
So,
tell their web developer?
there's a few tests that I think you can do individually to get a better understanding of the accessibility picture for your own site. And there's also some automated tests you can do as well, which I think will also give you a good picture. But I think if we start with the manual tests first, I think that almost gives you the baseline knowledge to understand the automated test a bit more. So I think as you mentioned a second ago, the keyboard test is a really important one, making sure that when you press tab, you can see visual indications of where you're at. You can interact with elements, you can click through that. If you check and that's all working, that's a really good start. The most common accessibility issue on the web is color contrast, and that's the foreground color against the background color. So say you've got a button, which a red button with white text, the background's the red, the foreground's the white, and
Mm-hmm.
each these colors need to have sufficient contrast. So people with low vision, people who are colorblind, loads of different people with different access needs need to have sufficient contrast to be able to see this information effectively. But so many times I see companies just take their brand color and just put white on top of it, and it's almost unreadable. So a little test that you can do is a lot of browsers like Chrome and Firefox, they have eye pickers that you can install, or they have it already pre-installed. Just get your eye picker, take the color of the foreground and background color as the elements you want to test, and then you can put it into a contrast checker tool. So with this, again, web accessibility in mind, a really great organization. They've got a contrast checker. You can put it in and it will show you how compliant the color contrast is. So that's a really, really good test you can do. Another one is people need to contact you. They need to use forms, right? One of the key ways of doing it. It's good to provide alternative options, but for lots of people, forms are how people buy from you. It's how they contact you. If forms aren't set up properly, then you're shooting yourself in the backside, to be honest, because if you're not linking your labels, if you don't have labels for each form input, then for someone using a screen reader or tab navigation, it becomes so much more difficult to use. For example, you might sometimes see an input, so you can check this on your own site. If you start typing and then the labels inside of it and just disappears, this is called a placeholder text. That hasn't been set up correctly. So someone using a screen reader, what should happen, it should read out what that input is. So like first name, second name, reason for inquiry, for example. And if it doesn't have a label, then the person using the screen reader has no contextual information about what that input is. So it's really important to check that. And a good way to check it again, and this is almost two tests in itself, is if you click on the label, the text of the label, it should highlight the input below it. And that will let you know that the label and input are actually connected with each other, which will really help screen readers. So you don't have to go in through and try and work out like Essie did and work out how to use a screen reader, but you can just check some of the basics to see has it been set up correctly.
So what we'll do is we'll put some of those links that you talked about to the websites in the show notes. But also, I also know on the Celebrating Disability website, Joe has written a blog on what you can do to check some of these things for yourself, and some of those things are highlighted on that blog. So we'll also link to that blog in the show notes as well. So thank you very much, Joe. So I just want to change not change direction, but change kind of what we're talking about for a minute. So going back to what you were saying a minute ago in your introduction about what changed for you a few years ago, what took you on this direction of Squee, can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, and absolutely. It's a bit of a long story, so might have to bear with me. But
All right, cool. I'll just get my snack.
get your snacks, get your popcorn. Don't fall asleep, please.
I'll try not to. I've had my coffee, so it should be fine.
Good, good. Yeah, so kind of Squee came to fruition really after the birth of my daughter, Eloise, and who those who don't know, she was had a post birth diagnosis of a really rare form of Down syndrome, and yeah, I think she's really influenced me on what I'm doing today. So maybe if I just rewind and kind of tell the backstory to how it all kind of came about and how I transitioned over to Squee. So
Yes, please.
3 years ago now, me and my partner obviously found out we were pregnant, and we obviously delighted with the news. We kind of went in, had our first scans, and very early on, we were told that we were at high risk of things like Down syndrome and some other conditions too. So obviously there was a kind of already a little bit of worry. I remember being taken into like a room, and the the nurse at the time saying, "Oh, we're really sorry about this. This is like awful news. Have a think about what you want to do." And yeah, I remember just at that point kind of thinking to myself, and almost retrospectively looking back at it now, thinking, yeah, it wasn't the best information coming to me. It was very much leaning me towards a certain direction without probably having the bandwidth to fully process it. So yeah, there were already kind of things happening at that point, but I think we then moved on and we had something called a NIP test, which is a not invasive prenatal test, and that came back as negative. So we were then like, oh, we're back on effectively. Like everything's looking, she's healthy, she's all looking good. Again, I feel like looking back at this now, almost with guilt and like ableist views about this, but that's how we felt at the time. And anyway, the pregnancy continued. My daughter was in breech position, um, so we had a cesarean. So we went in for the day of her birth. It was all lovely. It all went really well. She was born. She was beautiful. All the nurses and doctors had a look at her. All said, "Oh, look, all looking fantastic. All going really well." So for 24 hours, we're in this real baby bubble and really, really high on life. She was breastfeeding instantly. So all these really good things happening straight away. And then I remember, I think the nurses, I think switched there. I think they were rotating in and out, and I think we had a new nurse, probably the fourth nurse to kind of have a look at her daughter. And I remember her just saying, we've seen some markers of Down syndrome, and I remember just thinking that, and like, what on earth are you talking about? We've had this test. Our consultant told us there's 99.9% certain that this can't be Down syndrome. And yeah, it was a lot. So we kind of were taken off to another room on our own. And again, this is why I look back with guilt, because I was kind of, instead of enjoying a new daughter, I was almost like in a state of panic, like thinking, what is Down syndrome? What was it? How is it going to impact our life? How it's going to impact my daughter? And it was such an array of different emotions. And they still didn't know. The doctor kind of had a look at her and said, like, there's some markers, some not. So for the next 2 weeks while we were waiting for these results, we were again like again, and I really do look back with guilt because we probably didn't enjoy a new experience and a new daughter as much as we could have because we were waiting for these huge results. And then on top of that, we also found out that when we did find out she had Down syndrome, it was actually the genetics came back and it was a really, really rare form of Down syndrome. So typically, the most common form of Down syndrome is trisomy 21, which is an extra copy of your ring chromosome 21. But Eloise, my daughter, doesn't have this extra copy. She has a ring chromosome, and it's almost got like two chromosomes fused together. She has
Okay.
some which has this fusion, some that don't, some have part deletion. She's, I think, the only person in the UK has kind of got this form of Down syndrome, so it's incredibly rare.
Mhm.
And then we found out soon after this that, as I'm sure parents of children with Down syndrome know, that children often have heart defects after this. So after processing this information, we then found out she needed heart surgery to fix a hole in her heart. So it was a lot of stuff kind of going on these early months for us to process. So we ended up joining some local charities. We spoke to this really lovely lady from the Cotswold Down syndrome charity local to us, and she met us for a coffee, and she really like validated our feelings, what we were going through, but then kind of point told us like this isn't life that you're thinking maybe of things that aren't actually the case, and it started to open my eyes up a little bit to kind of the world I was in. As I mentioned before, kind of this ableist mindset maybe I had a little bit, and I started to kind of reflect on myself, and then Eloise's heart surgery went absolutely fine. She's all okay now. She's thriving. She's doing amazingly. But I think it gave me time to kind of sit back, analyze, look at myself, and then realize what am I doing with my life? Do I want to be doing kind of the traditional route and traditional work, or do I want to try and make a more positive impact in my own way on life? So for me, obviously, I'm still very passionate about web design and web development. It kind of lended itself into what can I do to make the world more inclusive for my daughter to start with.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
that's expanded out more and more since. So that's really what kind of led me to starting Squeeze to because I think online and digital resources are so vital to so many people, and I think we can be doing way more about it. So yeah, I think it all stems down to my daughter really.
Thank you so much for kind of going through that story. And it sounds like Eloise is already leaving a legacy in her path, which is really awesome. I'd love to, if you're happy to kind of talk about it a bit more, touch upon kind of some of the beginning bits of your story when the doctors were telling you what might happen, which led you to kind of thinking what you were thinking. So first of all, kind of, I think personally, I think it's ableism is everywhere and it's ingrained in our everyday life, and it's just an accepted part of life, really. I mean, I think it's the most accepted oppression and the most accepted discrimination out there, which is disgusting. And when doctors and are kind of the people that we rely on to give us the information we need tell us, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, this terrible thing has happened, we can't help but kind of ride that wave as well. I mean, my mum still. I mean, I know that she. Not, I don't mean to say the word accept, but she loves me for who I am, and I don't think that she changed me now. Well, too late if she does want to. But she still talks about I had a beautiful baby girl and then she became disabled. And I don't think that she means, oh my God, my daughter's not the beautiful baby girl. But I
Mhm.
think it's a massive brain shift, isn't it? You have expectations which have all of a sudden shifted, and what doesn't help is those in quotes experts that we rely on that say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I mean, there's kind of a famous like fictional quote that disabled people use all the time when we're explaining ableism. So a daughter, your son or daughter or your child comes into the world, and the doctor says, oh, congratulations, you have a beautiful baby, XYZ. If a disabled child comes into the world, that same doctor says, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And so from day one, we have been trained to believe that it's a bad thing. So I don't think that I think it's really lovely that you're honest about it and kind of were able to change those opinions and actually developed a business that will support not only your daughter but so like billions of people, as you've said. Um, but I think that it's really hard to get ourselves out of that initial feeling when we don't have any prior experience of it as well.
Absolutely. I think it's almost like you have to reset your mind about, because I think realistically you see a future and you have to just tweak it a little bit. It's not that it's going to be worse or better. It's just slightly changed.
Yeah.
And I really do wish that looking back at it, obviously the health professional helped my daughter recover from heart surgery, so she's done amazing. But I do look back at that time and the communication style and think if we had known what we know now, we would not be feeling that exact way we did. And that's why I'm going to have a little bit of a shout out because my partner runs an Instagram account and she's just trying to raise awareness for new parents of children with Down syndrome about the actual experiences that we go through of having a child with Down syndrome. Because I don't think I remember when we were in hospital and kind of we were put into this room just given the leaflet and kind of left to it on our own. I don't think we were really given much support in that situation. So I think if you can actually connect with people who have real lived experience, I think that is so beneficial for us as a family. It was massive. And I think for anyone else there who's kind of going through that, or maybe you've just found out during the pregnancy that you have a child with Down syndrome, go and have a chat with someone with lived experience. I think it will massively change your perception of what it actually is.
I think that's, I just want to reiterate what you've just said there because I think peer support is such a key element of not only, disability, but everything. But we're talking about disability today. It's such a key element of empowerment. So we will share also that Instagram on our show notes as well because I'm going to go and have a look myself, and it would be great for other people who feel as though they would like to go and have a look. So thank you so much for sharing that, Joe.
No worries.
So let's go back to web accessibility because obviously you're building an empire for Eloise when she grows up as well, which is
Exactly.
awesome. I'm quite jealous actually. She's going to be a billionaire by the time she's 30 at this rate. It's excellent. So let's go back to web accessibility for now. So can you talk to us about what the bigger picture of web accessibility is? I mean, we've talked a little bit about kind of what it means for us in the UK and what it means for disabled people in the UK and further apart, and what happens when people don't have those accessibility features and they need to move around the website. But what is the wider picture? Are there what's going to happen to people if they're not being accessible in
So yeah,
terms
no,
of their business, but also in terms of, I don't know, legislation?
yeah, no, it's a really interesting question because a lot of time I'll talk about it from the perspective of the business case and try and highlight the aspects of why it's so important. But there is for many companies a real legal obligation with this too. So I'm sure many people listening in the UK will be aware of the Equality Act. Obviously, businesses must not discriminate against disabled people, and website digital services fall under that.
Mhm.
Um, See, there's regulation like the public sector bodies accessibility regulations that ensures that uh, public sector websites must meet WCAG 2.1 standards. That's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and 2.1 AA is kind of the industry standard. I won't go into too much of that because there's a big set of guidelines which I'll probably bore you to death going through them all. But really important that's kind of thought about. But I think the big bit of legislation that's come out this year, and I think a real game changer really has been the European Accessibility Act. And while obviously the legislation directly impacts the EU and member states, it goes way beyond that. So if you're a UK business, but you've got consumers in the EU, and you're a company that's earning £2 million, over £2 million in revenue, then you are almost certainly going to fall into the remit of this act, and you're going to have to be compliant. So it's really important that you're aware of this legislation. It's only recently come into play. What you need to be looking at is building, your web accessibility plan, kind of embedding it into your culture. And again, referring back to those web accessibility content guidelines, you need to go and have a look at them because that's your baseline. That's what you need to be ensuring you're compliant with. So, yeah, go and have a look, have a read on European Accessibility Act. There's even some stuff on the SWE website to kind of explain about accessibility, having a bit more information. But yeah, the landscape is starting to change, I think, and this is a really, really positive step in the right direction.
And I know you mentioned it's for companies over turning over more than 2 billion a year. I think you said 2 million a year.
2 million, yeah.
2 million a year, but just because if you're not, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be working towards this anyway. I mean, as you pointed out, Joe, kind of if we start working up on it now and embedding it in our websites now, then it's not going to be such a big project when it comes to that 2 million a year. And just because you might not be turning over that doesn't mean that you don't have customers that want to engage and interact with you and deserve equality and autonomy on how they look at your website.
Absolutely. And I think obviously companies grow and things change. And if you're retrospectively trying to fit accessibility in once a website has gone live and you've got a system in place, then you could be, if it hasn't been built with accessibility in mind from the offset, then you're going to be spending a lot of money having to rebuild it, refix these issues. But if you're considering it from the design phase, from the testing phase, having EDI leaders and leadership right involved from the very start of saying, like, how can we train our staff to ensure that when they're adding content, they're building it correctly, then the costs are going to be minimal because you're already embedding it into your culture. So I just think for anyone listening and you have the ability to start influencing change and starting to embed this into your culture, don't wait. Start looking at it now and start making those changes.
And the world is changing as well. So the new generations that are coming up, they're not accepting anything but true equality and accessibility. So actually, if you're training your employees now, when they progress in their career, maybe progress with you or move on, it will give people so much more opportunity, which will make you as an employer the employer to go to because you're giving people these basics already.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just such it doesn't just impact you financially. I think reputationally, it has such a big impact. And you're right, the world's changing. The way we view the world is so much different. And I say there's just so many benefits that I could go on forever. But yeah, just to start thinking about it, just you don't have to learn everything straight away. You don't have to know everything straight away. But if you can make small incremental steps every day just to learn a little bit, learn how to write some better alternative text, learn how to check your colors, just start thinking about these little elements. Even with your social media, try to minimize how many emojis you're using, because for screen readers that will get read out and it will interrupt the flow of information coming to them. So just try it and make these small improvements every day, and hopefully that will compound, build up, and as I say, it'll build up into your culture.
I never actually thought about emojis. I mean, I don't use 100 emojis a day anyway, especially not in my professional life. But that's something I've just learned. I didn't know that because I get my Siri to read out loud to me, and he does go smiley face emoji. But so I suppose if we are using emojis, make sure they're not in the middle of a sentence, so they're at the end of the sentence.
Yeah,
So as you say, it's not interrupting the flow.
I think one of the worst use cases for emojis is like if say you've got a post on, I don't know, LinkedIn, for example, and you've got bullet points, people sometimes replace the bullet points with emojis for each of the bullet points. Nightmare, because the person reading it's going to hear this depending on what emoji it is, a long-winded description of this emoji every single bullet point, and it just interrupts the whole flow. So little things like that, just try and think about them when you're creating content.
Yeah, no, I'm going to pass that on to the person that does my content as well. Not
There
that
you
she
go.
uses a lot, but yeah, it's a good way of getting rid of those emojis as well, because actually it's a little bugbear of mine. It's like, it's not professional, stop using them. And you know, when people sign off with a kiss, no, a full stop will suffice. Thank you very much. And if you think about somebody reading those kisses on a screen reader, it's going to be like X, X, X. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
Mhm.
So it's not even meaningful anyway. Anyway, that's my little rant over about emojis and kisses in a professional manner. I don't like them. Okay, cool. So Joe, tell us about your influencers. I mean, obviously Eloise, imagine, is a big influencer, but apart from Eloise, is there anyone else?
Yeah, no, so
Me as well.
yeah, no, I was gonna you're gonna be brought up in this essay, absolutely. So
Oh, stop it! You're making me blush.
but yeah, no, obviously my main influence is obviously my daughter, because she obviously, as we've already spoken about, she pushed me towards having this route. But in terms of like from the development like spectrum, I had an amazing boss in my first job who kind of started making me understand that you have to continually work and develop to understand more. So that was a real big influence for me. From the accessibility perspective, there's a couple, but like I don't think, because it's not a huge topic that it should be at the moment, there wasn't people that I instantly gravitated to. But since I've started to learn more about it, I think someone like Leonie Watson, who is chair of the W3C, she's amazing. She does fantastic talks on accessibility, and someone I look up to and get lots of information from. I think she's amazing. But I think there's organisations that I think I mentioned before, Web Accessibility in Mind. They have so much great information and great tools that you can use that really help me and develop my understanding of website accessibility. And AbilityNet is another really good charity that highlight accessibility too. But then I think when I started the web accessibility journey, I started connecting with people kind of in the inclusion space, and that's where I met yourself, Essie, who I've already learned so much from in a short space of time, just on even small things like communication, language that being used, like all these amazing things that you just subconsciously, and going back to that come ableist mindset in certain ways. I'm sure I still have some ableist tendencies that I'm still trying to resolve and try and iron out, but I'm just continually learning and developing from people I'm around. And there's other people too. Just to shout out people I've also spoke with who have been great influences on me. There's Nicola Ankin from Exclusion, who I've spoken to quite a few times, and she works with schools and has gone into and assisted and helped with children with Down syndrome in schools, for example. And she's teaching children and going to schools about the importance of inclusion and that generalized topic. Audrey Pantelis at Elevation Coaching too, she's doing a very similar thing, who I'm having lots of conversations with, and I think she's doing an amazing job too. So there's people out there who are really spreading the message and trying to raise awareness. And you know I think, looking back at me, if I had more information as a child to start with, and then going into adult, or just about culturally, about how to be a lot of the time, I think, and how to communicate, I think it would have helped me so much. So yeah, I think it's people in these areas that have really, really helped me and developed me, I think, over the years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. And where can our listeners and viewers learn more about you and connect with you?
So yeah, I'm at squee.design. That's the business. If you want to contact me, I'm also on LinkedIn at Joe Collett. We're also on there at Squee Web Design. But yeah, if you email me, phone me, contact me, all the contact details are on the website. So yeah, always available for a chat, always happy to talk about all things accessibility.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. It's been lovely talking to you today.
And you, Essie, thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.